there is only one man who is called the father of our country. This man changed America forever and made the America that we know and love today. This man was humble, he was kind, and an absolute genius, and this man was George Washington. And today I will be telling you how George Washington became the man he was today, and his accomplishments, and how his accomplishments impact all of us to this day. George Washington's father died when he was 11 years old, and so then he was put into the care of his half-brother Lawrence. But Lawrence died when George Washington was only 20, and when he came back from a military base in the Caribbean. So this really made George Washington sad, and so he was pushed to go into the military as well instead of being a plantation owner. And so in 1752, he joined the military, and in 1754, he became the commander of the Virginia Regiment. And a part of why he was such a good military leader, according to gwvirginia.edu, he had the perfect physique, he had great health, and he was immune to smallpox because he survived the disease when he was younger. And then he got out of the military in 1759 and married Martha Custis, which is the famous Martha Washington we know of today. But they did not have any kids of their own. However, he did love and raise Martha's kids from her previous marriage, just like he would his own. And then at this time, he became the owner of Mount Vernon and was the wealthiest plantation owner in all of Virginia. And then onto his accomplishments. One of his major accomplishments was when he crossed the Delaware River on Christmas night to launch a surprise attack on the enemy. And this is just one of his many victories that he had in the Revolutionary War, but people say that he was the reason why we won the Revolutionary War. So after that, George Washington was chosen to be the first president of the United States at the Constitutional Convention, and there he helped set up the government that we have today. And he knew that he had to set an example for future presidents, so he declined the $25,000 salary that Congress offered to give him because he didn't want to set the impression that only a wealthy man could become president. And he also signed the peace treaty with Britain, and America has been allies with them ever since. So who knows if George Washington never signed that treaty, if America and Britain would still be allies. Then when George Washington retired, he wanted to give the country a final goodbye, and that we still do to this day, and it is known as the farewell address. So how this all affects us to this day, George Washington could have been a king of America, but he chose to make the United States of America, and he chose to be a citizen instead. He set the 2-term limit for presidents, and which was only broken one time by Theodore Roosevelt. And he created the 3 branches of government and the checks and balances system to prevent another monarchy like they had under Britain's rule. So without George Washington, there wouldn't be United States of America. We wouldn't have presidents. We wouldn't have 3 branches of government. We wouldn't have a democracy. We would still be a monarchy and still have a king. And so without him, we wouldn't even be like we are today. And our country could not have been more lucky to be founded by a man whose core belief was liberty was larger than any single individual. And that concludes my speech. I will now be opening the floor for questions.
So, what was the most interesting thing that you've learned about this speech?
She asked what was the most interesting thing that I learned, and I think the most interesting thing that I learned was that George Washington never had any kids of his own. Thank you. That concludes my question and answer session.